What's going on, guys? It's Sway, and today I just want to go over my first impressions of the Canon EOS R6 from the perspective of a long-term GH5 owner. Now, this video is a first impressions video. This is not a full review. I've only had the camera for about a week now. I've done one professional shoot with it. The rest of it has just been like running around. So this isn't a full review. I'll do something like that, I guess, a little bit later. I don't think you get to know a camera until at least 3 or 4 months shooting with it. Like, I don't even think I got to really know my GH5 until shooting with that thing for like half the fucking year. But by that time when I was shooting with it, I never had to look down at the camera. I knew where all the buttons were. I knew how to switch all my settings. I never had to look down. Me and the camera functioned as one unit, okay? One unit to fight them all and make fire-ass shots. So when I get comfortable with this camera to that same level, I will then actually make a review of that. But until then, this is just pretty much purely take this as a first impressions video. Nothing more, nothing less. So the main reason I switched cameras, first of all, if you're switching cameras, this should always be to upgrade. So you should never have any downsides from what you currently left. So the main reason I wanted to switch to the R6 from the GH5 is that I was running into a lot of scenarios where I was picking up a lot of noise in my footage with the GH5. It's no secret, GH5, tiny sensors aren't really that good for low light. So that was one thing. And then also, one of my clients has a car shop. We have a dyno. Sound gets really loud. The minimum gain level on the GH5 is like negative 12 decibels, which even with that, I could stand maybe 20 feet away from the car and the audio was still clipping. So I needed something that could pretty much do both of those with no issue. When I was looking, the R6 happened to be that. Now, as far as the things I liked about it that were still similar to the GH5, because like I said, you don't want to do an upgrade and then end up losing out on a bunch of shit. So the main things that I liked about it, or the main things I liked about it that I did not lose, was the fact that I still get 422 10-bit internal 4K, so I don't need to use an external monitor or any of that other shit to get that kind of quality. Still has in-body image stabilization, which I love and I pretty much need because 99% of the time I'm always shooting handheld. I very rarely use gimbals. I honestly hate gimbals, but I'll get more into that later in another video possibly. The sensor on this is 20 megapixels. I think the one on the GH5 is like 20 point something. It's pretty much just the same exact shit. Me with megapixels, I'm not out here trying to use a 45 megapixel camera, 42 megapixel camera. I've owned the A7R III before. Honestly, it's extra and it's excessive. Most of the times my photos are being used for either Instagram, which we already know butchers the hell out of quality, or I'm using it to just upload for my clients' websites or just things of that nature. So there's no need for me to have a 42 megapixel camera to make large prints. And I mean, you could probably still make large prints with a 20 megapixel sensor because that's more than enough range. If you're worried about, oh man, I can't like maybe recompose my shot if it's at 40 megapixels, if you need 40 megapixels to recompose your shot, you might want to go back and then try to figure out the fundamentals of framing your shots before you're looking into getting a 42 megapixel camera. That's just me, not throwing shade, but that's just my opinion on that. Some of the other things, it has dual card slots, which I love to have. I normally just assign one card for photos and the other card to do video. Same exact way I had my GH5 set up, same exact way I have my R6 set up currently. Now, you might be asking, why not the R5? It has the 8K RAW, it has that super 4K, which is just downsampled 8K. Now, my reason for that is the number one thing, which I mean, I feel like half of YouTube has just been running a train on the R5 talking about this, but I'm going to say it again. That overheating thing was just a no-go for me. I don't want a camera that's going to overheat on me like that where I have to now let it sit for like 20-something minutes until I can get another 5 minutes of recording out of it. Not my style. Now, I know you don't happen to get as much of the issues if you're just shooting in the regular 4K, the one that's just taking a 4K image, not the 8K downsampled to 4K. Now, when I had watched comparisons between the R5 and the R6's 4K image, which you're looking at right now, is I think a 5.1K image that's downsampled or just squeezed into a 4K. So because of that, the 4K that you get out of the R6 is actually sharper than the R5, from what I've seen. Correct me if I'm wrong, leave a link down below to another video, but as far as I know and as far as my research went, when I had looked into the 4K that the R6 puts out, it was clearer than what I would be using on the R5 because I'm not using anything related to that 8K recording because that's not usable in my opinion. That's not reliable. Unless you're hooking like a fucking ice box up to your camera, which I'm not about to walk around with a bunch of dry ice hooked up to my camera. Not doing it. And then also, all my broke boys gonna feel me on this, the R6 was just cheaper. I mean, it's cheaper by like, what, like $1,000 or something? Whatever it was, I don't even remember the number because it wasn't a concern to me. I just knew the R5 was way more expensive and I was not trying to do all that. So, you good. Now, before I get into all the things that I absolutely love about the R6, let me just go into some of the things I miss switching to the R6 from the GH5. And now, yes, I know I started out the video saying that the only reason you should change your camera setup is if you're getting upgrades and you're not really losing out on anything. You're never going to get the perfect camera, so there's a couple things that I lost, but they're not big issues, and let me go over them. Okay, so one of the things I missed, and it's really not that big an issue, is the fact that the GH5 shot cinema 4K, so the resolution was, what, 4096 by 2160, as opposed to UHD 4K, or 4K UHD, which is 3840 by 2160, so you lose a little bit of resolution. Not the biggest deal, honestly, not anything to cry over. It was just kind of nice to have those little extra pixels, but hey, I ain't tripping. One of the other things I don't like about this is having a record limit. On the GH5, we had no record limit. You could shoot until the fucking battery died. And if you saw my last video, you know I had a V-mount battery hooked up to that thing, so I could literally shoot for 12 hours straight. As long as you got SD card space, you're fine. And the GH5 wouldn't even overheat, so that was also a non-issue. So yeah, having a record limit here kind of sucks. But for me and what I do, it doesn't really affect me. Most of the time I'm shooting 5-7 minute bursts tops. Like I literally will never exceed a 7-minute recording on my camera. So having no record limit, it's just one of those things that's nice to have, but I was really never using it in the first place. So once again, not tripping over it. And then now, like I just previously said, overheating. GH5 had no issues with overheating as far as my use went, and I could literally leave that camera on for hours at a time, shooting in the sun, in the summertime, have not one issue. Now, the R6, I haven't run into any issues yet. I've done one shoot, well, it was pretty much like a full day of shooting for one of my clients. Now, I never actually got the camera to overheat, but it has like a little timer that pops up in the corner, and it will tell you pretty much how many minutes you have left of recording before you're gonna get an overheat. So normally, like, you'll see that says 29 minutes and change because that's how much the recording limit is. But then as you keep shooting, you'll see it say 25, then 20, then 15, then 10. 10 is the lowest I got it to go to. Once again, like I said, I'm always shooting in bursts. So pretty much once I stop recording, put the camera down, turn it off, let it chill out. And it's pretty dope because let's say you have 20 or 15 minutes, you turn it off for 1 minute, you turn it back on, you just got back 5 minutes. So it's pretty much almost like 1 minute of chill time gives you back 5 minutes of recording time. Not an exact, like, it's not a direct proportion, but it's pretty close to that number. So once again, it kind of sucks that I have a camera that I kind of have to think about the overheating, but it's really not that big of an issue because I never end up recording long enough to run into that being an issue. And then the other thing I miss, or that I'm kind of running into an issue with now, is the log files on this are huge and they're in the H.265, which is a pretty compressed format. So as a result of being compressed, your computer has to work a little bit harder. As a result of the computer working harder, you might get dropped frames. So when I previously used the GH5 on DaVinci, I never had any issues with drop frames. I have a MacBook Pro 16-inch 2019. I know, I messed up. I bought the thing literally, and then like a week later, they're like, oh, M1 chip, no overheating, so much faster. Yay. But anyway, I'm gonna hold my L like an adult. But like I was saying, so with the MacBook Pro 16-inch that I have, which is fully spec'd out, with the GH5 files, I never had any issues of dropped frames. It would run straight through it. Now with the files from the H.265 422 10-bit from the R6, from C-Log or Canon log, whatever you want to call it, all right, those files, when I'm playing them through DaVinci Resolve, I have to kind of keep stopping and then restarting because those frames will drop, so I have to make proxies in order to, well, edit more efficiently, so I don't have to keep worrying about hitting play, pause, play, pause, play, pause to get the thing to finally play smooth. So that's one of the other things I'm not liking so much, but making proxies or optimized media on Resolve is pretty easy. You literally just right-click on the file, hit Generate Optimized Media, wait a couple of minutes, go watch some YouTube, make a coffee, come back, you're good to go. So not really tripping over it. And now that I got all that negative shit out of the way, let's talk about the things that I actually love about the R6. So one, like I said, the low light on this is a lot better. It's way cleaner. I'm going to put in some footage. This was all shot at, I think I remember being at about 6400 and even 12,800 ISO in some of these clips. And the footage, pretty much there's little to no noise there, where if I was shooting with the GH5, I would probably have to run the ISO maybe even higher at that point, which I was using the Speed Booster XL and all that other shit there and shooting it at 1.8. And I would just end up with a lot of noise in my footage, and it was pissing me off just because I have to either denoise the hell out of it, which is wasting more time, or I just have noisy ass footage, both of which I'm not a fan of. So having the bigger full frame sensor, being better at low light, I'm in love with on this. And then one of the other things that I really like about this camera is the stabilization. So now this shit is wild. So the GH5, anyone who's shot with that before, you already know, homie, we were spoiled. That is the greatest in-body image stabilization I think to exist, and I still stand by that. The in-body image stabilization on this is pretty good, but it gets a little funky by itself. For a period of time, I was actually running my Sigma 18-35 on this with that little EF to RF adapter to the camera. And it was fine if you're just standing there not moving, but the minute you start walking, it would like trot. It was like fighting itself. Like I feel like it didn't know what was actually happening. But once you combined the IBIS, the in-body image stabilization, with a stabilized Canon lens, Lord have mercy on my soul. Home, bruh, Nick, this shit beautiful, bro. And then one of the other things that we all know, if you're a GH5 owner, you're gonna feel me on this, our autofocus was absolute shit, okay? I always, now, for me, that's not the biggest issue, because for the most part, I've always shot manual focus. My first camera was a Nikon D3300. Camera had shitty autofocus. Then I had the A7S II. Also, it was contrast-based autofocus, so autofocus on it was not great, not that reliable in my opinion for what I was doing. So I've always pulled manual, so I'm not some spoiled kid out here like, oh, I've always used phase detection autofocus, yada, yada, yada. Nah, I always shoot manual focus, but it's nice to have good autofocus because right now I'm doing talking head stuff. I have it on, I'm seeing the little box, it's on my eye. It's tracking me the entire time. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to think. I'm only using my peripherals to look at the screen to the side just to make sure I'm centered up, and that's about it. I'm not worrying about if I'm in focus or not. And then one of the other benefits to having dope autofocus is now I might actually get to use a gimbal and enjoy it. Because normally I'm shooting with a gimbal, I'm over here holding the thing, then I gotta try to find some weird ass way to like contort my body so I can pull focus, but you don't wanna move the lens too hard before you just kick the gimbal out, then it goes limp dick on you. So that's another benefit of this. So now I might actually get some gimbal work. Who knows? Who knows? Battery life on it, I haven't run into any issues that I thought were weird. I'm probably gonna get flamed for this. The batteries I always get on my cameras, the little wasabi batteries you get from Amazon for like 20 bucks. Look, I've been using them bitches for like 3 years. I haven't run into any issues with them yet. I'm gonna continue to keep using them until one of them blows up my camera. And I'm gonna knock on wood, because who knows before I blow this camera up, because there's a wasabi battery in here right now. But yeah, battery life on here has been fine. I haven't noticed anything like the battery life is shorter than my GH5 or longer. It's pretty much, it feels about the same. I feel like I was changing batteries about just as frequently, which with the GH5 wasn't that much to begin with because the batteries are pretty fucking brolic. Then one of the other things that's really dope about this camera is it's the same exact sensor and processor, I believe, from the 1DX Mark III, which I don't know if you've noticed, I've never heard anybody have anything bad to say about that sensor, and it's for good reason, because I was taking pictures with this thing. Honestly, this shit's a fucking cheat code. Like, I'm shooting and it's just like, yo, these pictures just coming out just bangers, heaters, flames, all other adjectives that millennials be using to say this shit makes nice ass pictures, okay? It's cheating. Honestly, it's cheating. That's IDDQD, IDKFA, all that shit. Only my OGs are going to know what that is. If you know what those cheat codes are, please comment down below if you know what they're from. If you get it right, I will give you a whole attaboy, because I ain't got no money to give you because your boy's broke after buying this camera. And then the last thing, this is going to sound kind of stupid. One of the other things I love about the R6 is just that it's something new for me. I had the GH5 for about a year and 3 months, and I had actually owned it previously before that for like another 5 months. So I had the thing... I had the GH5 for a long ass fucking time. But honestly, sometimes just having something new, at least for me personally, it inspires me to want to create more, and I kind of just have more fun with the process because it's like, oh shit, shiny new toy, I can make dope new things, just because now the images look a little bit different than your last setup. So it kind of makes you feel like a little bit more artsy because now your vibe is changing up. So honestly, for me, it's just a plus having this thing as something new. Now, that's not to say you always need to get new shit. I had my Sony A7S II for about 2+ years before I got rid of it and switched over to the GH5. So I have no problem holding cameras. Even some of my homies, Joe Reiser, I might be mispronouncing his last name, so don't come after me, bro. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that motherfucker's been shooting with the GH4 forever. If you don't have a reason to upgrade your camera and you don't feel like you have a reason to upgrade your camera, don't do it. I felt I had a need to upgrade my camera. I was running into issues with low light with the GH5, and then also the audio levels were fucking me up. So I had a reason to switch, and then also, it's just a plus having new shit. So, whatever. In closing, am I happy with my purchase of the EOS R6, EOS R6, Canon R6, the R6, whatever you call it? Am I happy with the purchase? Hell yes. This thing's absolutely amazing. It's making my workflow a lot easier. Just in general, I feel more able to create. The images I'm getting are just absolutely gorgeous. Taking pictures with this thing is a blast. It's amazing. I'm honestly in love with this purchase right now. But who knows? I'm still in the honeymoon phase, so if I fall out of love with it, I will let you know later. But once again, my name is Sway, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.